Welcome to In Isolation. I'm James Kerwin, webcasting from Los Angeles, California, and with me, as always, is my lovely co-host, all the way from Surrey Hills, England, Nicola Bryant. Hi, Nicola.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing this week?
Good, thank you. A fairly productive week, so yeah.
How's isolation doing ya?
Okay, yeah, I've had better sleep. I've got a lot of work done on the screenplay I'm working on, and we've had some beautiful weather, which I only got out once, apart from dog walks, and now it's all cold and windy, and I've got a fire again, so we're back to a cold spring.
Ooh, cozy.
We're going through the seasons, as we do, very quickly in each season.
Yeah, we don't really have those in Los Angeles. But...
Nope.
So this week, you and I talked about this, and for the last few weeks, we've talked about kind of lighthearted topics. We've talked about what we've done in our past favorite projects we've worked on, what we're working on in the future potentially, and just stuff like that. This week, we figured we would tackle a more nuanced topic that's, I wouldn't say serious, but it's a genuine topic. And this is something that just right off the bat, we should say probably this episode might not be right for young children viewers.
Yeah.
The way this topic came up, and the reason that we decided to do this, was a viewer comment that was actually made. Now, we encourage viewer questions and comments. People can write to us on Twitter using the hashtag #InIsolation and post a question or comment. People can post a question or comment on our YouTube channel underneath in each individual video. We usually address those at the end of the show. This week, we're going to do something a little different, and we're going to address a comment right here at the top of the show in the segment we call Voices from Isolation. So this week's comment comes via YouTube from user The Neon Chimp Channel. I apologize if this is oversharing, but I'm transgender, and the first time I ever went out as a woman was to a fancy dress yoga party. I went as Peri in Vengeance on Varos. You inspired me. Going out as the character gave me the confidence to actually just be myself. That was 5 years ago now, but that was a pivotal moment in my life and my transition. So thank you for the inspiration.
Isn't that moving? It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story with us, Neon Chimp Channel.
And the strange thing is, it's not the first time I've heard that.
Really?
Yeah. I think Doctor Who is it's a transformational influence. A lot of people have come to me through the decades of being involved with Doctor Who to say, Doctor Who changed my life. Doctor Who enabled me to get through an illness. Doctor Who enabled me to get over a relationship breakup. Many different things that it's done for people, but it's given them strength and courage.
That's so interesting to me because, and it got me thinking about Doctor Who as an inspirational show, as a show with role models and so forth. And you normally think of, when you talk about Doctor Who in that sense, you normally think of the Doctor as kind of the role model figure, the inspirational figure that, changes people's lives and so forth. But talking a little bit about Peri as an inspirational figure was really interesting to me because that's something that I hadn't come across, but it's interesting that you have.
Yes, it wasn't something, it started very early. In the week after my first episode went out, I received a fan letter from someone who had watched the show, a young lady, who said at the point before she watched Doctor Who, she was suicidal and was rock bottom, just right on the edge. And she felt that she'd just met a new friend. I mean, it was quite a burden.
Yeah. Wow.
I immediately rang the office and said, what should I do? Because I wasn't sure, my responsibilities. I felt very responsible for this person. And I did correspond with them.
Okay.
I felt very nervous about the whole situation. And then I started to feel, well, hey, somehow, and I don't really know how, but somehow I'm doing some good.
I mean, it's interesting because this this particular individual
Mm.
who posted this comment, she found within Peri the strength and the courage to dress the way she wanted to. That's a pretty amazing thing, that not just Peri but your costumes actually inspired somebody to do that, which kind of leads me to my next point, which is, a lot over time has been written in books, debated at panels and conventions and so forth, about Peri as kind of a sex symbol, because let's be honest, she was.
Yeah.
She didn't wear a lot of clothing, and that was by design to draw in more adult male viewers, and I'm sure it worked. Now, there are people obviously who appreciate it and like that, and then I'm sure there's people who decry that and have an issue with it, and I completely understand that perspective as well.
Absolutely.
But for me, as a young person going through middle school and kind of coming into my own at the time that Colin and you were on Doctor Who, watching the way that the Doctor interacted with Peri, I think was very formative, at least for me personally. I probably didn't realize this at the time, but looking back, I think I can see this, because the interesting thing is that even though Peri dressed rather provocatively, the Doctor never treated her as such. He never objectified her. He never judged her. He never shamed her. He never flirted with her. He never came onto her romantically. It was live and let live. And of course, when you've got a Doctor wearing what he's wearing, he can dress however the heck he wants. So you can dress however the heck you want. And there was absolutely no judgment or no shaming about that. And as a young man, that really, I think that affected me. You contrast that, with the other long-running science fiction 50-year franchise, which is Star Trek, and its treatment of women historically, which I find rather different. If you go back to the original Star Trek series in the 60s, if there's a scantily clad guest star, Captain Kirk is pretty much going to go for that. And he's going to treat her in that specific manner. And I can imagine how, even if I had grown up like a few decades earlier, how that may have affected me differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, the fact that the Doctor didn't objectify me and didn't look at me or Peri as a sexual object meant that I could play more the girl than the woman. If he had been like that, if he had been more of a Kirk character, then I think Peri would be constantly playing vulnerable. She was vulnerable, but mostly to attacks from monsters and other such things, and her life was constantly in danger. But she didn't really have to play that vulnerability, except the fact that there were many characters that seemed to fall in love with her and want to keep her and hold on to her. Like with Caves of Androzani, for example, it is a very Beauty and the Beast story.
Right.
But it was about company, and it wasn't just sexual. So I think that it enabled me to feel much more like I could play a young, brave, courageous, if slightly naive teenager, rather than having to play the sexy woman. I might be wearing that clothing, but I wasn't playing it that way.
Exactly. That's just how you happen to dress, and that doesn't become a part of the story, I guess, is what I'm saying, which I just loved. And I think that was, I think it was, despite the people who might have misgivings about it, I think it was tastefully done. I think it was tactfully done. And I think I view it as a positive thing, really, contrasted with the way maybe Star Trek has treated it.
It was a part of Bond. It was a part of the Avengers. It was a part of so many shows that were on television that the woman's role was to provide the window dressing, the interesting shape on the screen. I hadn't thought about what I would be wearing. I thought I was playing an American student. I thought I'd be in jeans and sneakers, as they would say, as you would say. I would be wearing trainers, I would be wearing sweatshirts, I would be wearing t-shirts, except I did know that I was starting off with a drowning sequence. So I did know I was going to start in a bikini. So that probably influenced how I ended up being dressed for most of the rest of the series.
So what was your reaction then when you found out that that was kind of the way Peri was going to dress?
I really didn't give it a great deal of thought because I'd grown up watching, Katie, bless her, with those terribly short skirts and boots, and watching Louise in what I remember a gentleman from the Times called fur bikini. But at other times I did end up wearing eventually trousers and a coat, but it didn't feel too bad. The 80s were loud and clingy, and there was lots of stuff that fitted in with that time. The thing that really bothered me was the shoes. Why am I wearing high heels when I've got a lot of things to run away from?
Kind of impractical when the Cybermen are chasing you.
Very much so. Yeah.
So when you first started doing Doctor Who as Peri, and you realized how you were going to be dressed and so forth, and understanding to a certain extent that was the product of the times, did you have any experiences related to that when doing any type of publicity for the show, or any like how were reactions to that?
Definitely. Because I started out with the drowning sequence, John sent me to do a couple of BBC, one was in-house and one was out-house, so to speak, so of sort of swimwear photographs. I can't remember which way around they happened, but the BBC one, he brought these hideous bathing costumes which did not suit my style of figure at all, and then he shot most of them up a ladder. When I saw the photographs, I was so upset, I burst into tears. And John Nathan Turner promised me that these photos would never see the light of day. Nothing that I was upset with would ever see the light of day. And I believed him, and that was in fact true during his lifetime. But once he'd passed away, some of these photos fell into very disreputable hands. One person bought them, and they then made a coffee table book. And I did not, of course, receive one single penny for any of that.
Wow.
And then they promised the photos back to me because I said I was really upset by it. And they said they would, and then they didn't. And then they published the book again. So that was a lovely journey, that one. And then there was another set of photos where this photographer was a page 3 photographer. Now, page 3 may not mean anything your side of the pond. Page 3 over here in the 80s was the third page in of your newspaper, your tabloid paper, where there would always be a picture of a topless woman.
Wow.
And I went to his studio with John Nathan Turner and the BBC publicity guy. So I thought, well, I'm with 2 other people, which was fine. And we did a shoot for about an hour or so, and then they left. So the guy starts bringing another reel of bikinis, which are even smaller. And he's made me put those on, and I put them on. And then he opened the fridge and he got the wine out and said, "Do you want a glass of wine?" And I was, "No, thank you." That wasn't John's plan. And certainly when we were in Lanzarote, although you were allowed to do topless sunbathing when we were filming Planet of Fire, John Nathan Turner said to me, "Do not do that because the press are with us." And I was like,
right.
Absolutely. So he wasn't like encouraging me to do that, but I had been left in the hands of a man whose business was taking photographs of women who weren't wearing many clothes.
Right, right.
And I wasn't prepared for this. There was no drama school class in how to handle this.
Absolutely.
And in fact, when one of the photos from that shoot ended up in a TV magazine, like it was like this half-clad woman with so much hair and makeup because he'd hired a makeup artist next to the TV schedules. And I said to my parents, I said, "I'm in this magazine." And they were like, "Oh, that's nice." And they flicked and they flicked and they flicked and they flicked and they went straight past me, didn't notice me. And then they flicked back and they flicked back and they didn't recognize me.
Uh-huh.
And it was just so made up but they didn't recognize their own daughter.
Wow.
But the whole culture of the BBC, I mean, when you would walk around, go into the bar, go into the canteen, walk around the donut, which was this sort of shape, which I'm sure everyone knows, the very iconic building, there were swing doors regularly as you walk around. And on a regular daily basis, I would get my behind tapped by a gentleman who would be assisting me through the swing doors, to which you almost had to turn around and say thank you. You couldn't turn around and glare. It might have been somebody very important at the BBC.
Oh no!
You just kind of go, you know. It was. I used to think, well, it's a lot better than some things people might do. It just something you took in your stride and got on with. And having spoken to other actors, female actors and male actors of the time, it was something we just kind of lived with. And I didn't find it that offensive. That's what's so strange. Now, I'd have a very different reaction.
Yeah.
But no, it's that thing where you just kind of, it was so the norm. And it's really great to think that young actresses in a similar position to the one that I was in back in the 80s now have somewhere to go with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. It is a very positive development, and that's disconcerting to hear that it was like that.
You know, this was the 80s. I still think it was a pretty fun time despite all of that.
Sure. And as we see from, I mean, despite having to have gone through all that, at least there were some positives that came out of it, as we see from this week's viewer comment. So,
absolutely.
You also mentioned there's a bar. The BBC had a bar.
Yes, a members-only bar. Oh, yeah, having a card to get in there was like gold dust. So it was
nice.
a social area that you could go to and have a drink after you'd finished filming at 10:30 at night, because you'd still be very wired from having done the show. It's not like you were like, oh, I've got to get home and get to bed, you know. So it was nice to sit and I'd be chatting with John about how the show had gone and what the next episode was going to be like, and it was great. And you would see all the people from other shows that were filming at the same time, all these famous stars just hanging around in the bar.
Yeah.
So very cool. Thank you all for tuning in and listening, and we look forward to your questions and your comments, and we'll see you again next week. Stay safe.